Hey guys, Fox here, and today it's time to do my Week 7 picks for the 2024 United Football League season. Now, this past week was a very successful week of my game picks, which we'll get to at the end of the video, where I went really solid. I had one game that I did very bad at, but the other three I had an insane record in overall. So we're riding a good hot streak heading into this next week, and this week's a big one. We have a lot of potential teams that can clinch the playoffs or be eliminated from the playoffs this week. So without further ado, let's get started with the first games, being the Saturday ones. Now we have the Showboats versus Renegades, the UFL Tank Bowl 2, which I will be streaming tomorrow starting at 12:45 p.m. Eastern Standard. And then following that will be the heavyweight matchup between the Battlehawks and Stallions, what many people consider the championship preview. Now in terms of the Showboats Renegades, the Showboats come in as underdogs. They're plus 3.5, they're plus 150 in the money line, and the over-under is 45. This one's a bit tough. The fact is the Renegades are 0-6, but the Showboats have looked god-awful the past few weeks. The fact is that you can very well make a case that any outcome is going to happen. I'm going to go with the Renegades winning this 28-20. I do think the Renegades win, I do think they cover, and I think it hits the over. Why? They're just a better team. The Showboats have done nothing that gives any sort of confidence in them, whereas the Renegades still have at least done some things. Luis Perez is still a top 3 quarterback in the league. Their overall play is still good enough to be competitive against teams like the Michigan Panthers, like the St. Louis Battlehawks. Whereas when you look at a team like the Showboats, all they've done is gotten completely run off the field. Whether it be against those same Battlehawks that the Renegades kept really close, the Showboats got absolutely destroyed by them. The Showboats have gotten obliterated by the Stallions. They got crushed by Michigan. So I don't really see them keeping it that close. I do think they end up keeping it a one-score game just due to how bad the Renegades defense has been. And while there have been some improvements, I think that overall the Renegades still do enough to get the job done. They're just a better team objectively. I think the Andre St. Amour signing is going to continue to be a big deal. We did see his impact last week against the Panthers, and I think we can continue to see it this week against the Showboats. I think the Showboats lose, and they get eliminated from the playoffs this week. Now, naturally, they'd have to have Michigan lose as well, but we'll get to that later. As for the heavyweight match between the Battlehawks and Stallions, this is a big one. Look, injuries. The Stallions are dealing with a ton of injuries on defense. Whether it be that guys do end up playing or not, you have a bunch of guys that are questionable to out, especially DeMarcus Gates being a big one. We know the Lorenzo Burns situation. Jojo Tillery got released because of his injury. So this team is missing a lot of key players, or is going to have a lot of key players playing banged up. But that's where the good thing called depth comes into play. The Stallions had the single best depth roster in the entire league, and so we're going to be able to see if that's, still true now. So that's the big question. Now, of course, the overall lines are -4 for the Stallions. The over-under is 47.5, and the Stallions are -192. This is a home game for them. There is, at least at the moment, looking to be the highest amount of people at a Stallions game since that Week 1 game in 2022 when the Stallions played the Generals. And so it's going to be a big deal. This is the A.J. McCarron homecoming. I do think the Stallions win this. I think they win it 24-21 in a very close game, but I do think it hits the under. The one thing people don't seem to realize is that these two teams, while having great offenses, have better defenses. We saw last week the Battlehawks offense very well can be stymied. It can be held in check. I predicted that would happen against the Roughnecks, and that's exactly what happened. If it wasn't for the fact the Roughnecks offense literally can't do anything at this point, the Roughnecks would have kept that a very close game instead of just a close one. Now the Stallions, while their offense with Adrian Martinez really hasn't shown a weakness, I just think that against this Stallions team or this Battlehawks defense, they've had a lot of players that are playing out of their mind. Mike Rose has been great. A few other guys have been great. While they might have a couple injuries still, the fact is the Battlehawks defense has been, at this point in the season, pretty much the second best defense in the league statistically by a mile. And eye test, easily a top 3, maybe even second best. So when you look at it, I think this game actually hits the under. I think this is one of those games where a lot of people are going to bet the over just because of, it's Adrian Martinez versus A.J. McCarron. I think the defenses show out. Well, I wouldn't be shocked if it does hit the over. I think it is the under. But I do think the Stallions win. They're playing at home. This is a team that is going for that undefeated crown. Remember, this team came very close to pulling off the undefeated season in 2022, but they had that late season loss to the Gamblers. This team has that kind of revenge factor if they want to go undefeated and get that on their resume. And to do that, they have to beat the Battlehawks. This is a potential championship preview game, and if the Stallions win this is a big deal. As the Stallions win also impacts the XFL conference a lot, because the Battlehawks losing means that they're not guaranteed the 1 seed, meaning they're not guaranteed home field advantage in the XFL playoff run. So there's a lot of big important things in this game, but I do think the Stallions win it. Now, the Sunday games, we have the Michigan Panthers playing the Defenders and the Brahmas versus Roughnecks. Again, all these games have playoff implications. Literally every game this week does. But now, the big one here is the Roughnecks and Panthers both have chances to clinch. Now, the Panthers have a chance to clinch a playoff berth. The Roughnecks have a chance to clinch an elimination. If the Panthers win and both the Roughnecks and Showboats lose, the Panthers will clinch a playoff berth, meaning the USFL conference is essentially set except for the 1 seed, which will be set in a couple weeks, if the Stallions just keep winning. And as for the Brahmas defenders, naturally the defenders can jump over the Brahmas in the standings if they win and the Brahmas lose. So there's a lot of key things to look out for in this week. Now with the Panthers defenders, the Panthers are -1 despite the game being at Audi. The over-under is 43, and the Panthers are -115 to the -105 for the defenders. This is a tough one because the defenders went back and played another good game at home, but it wasn't really a good game. Their defense did enough. Quentin Dormady didn't look all that good, but they still allowed a lot of rushing yards. That's why I think the Panthers win this. I think they win it, and it's not even that close. I think it's 30-20, a 2-score game. I think the Panthers do cover naturally. I think that it hits the over. It's just when you look at it, it's just hard to see the defenders are going to play. It was a very weird game against San Antonio. Again, they allowed a ton of rush yards. Etling is a better quarterback than Dormady. The Panthers have had a lot better overall connection with their quarterback to receiver than Dormady has to his. So I think that overall, when you look at it, it's just the Panthers are just a better team at this point than the Brahmas due to the fact that the Brahmas have a substantially worse quarterback than Chase Garbers. But the Brahmas, while they still have a great defense, the Panthers are right behind them or basically equal to them. I think the Panthers' defense is better, but that is now not the case because Frank Gidna is going to be out for basically the entire season unless they make the championship game. So while they are losing that one huge piece, that's why I think that the defenders do put up more points than they did against the Brahmas defense. I think because of the fact they lost Gidna, that eliminates the Panthers' defense from being better than the Brahmas to being slightly worse than the Brahmas. But offensively, the Panthers have 2 running backs that both can go off. Even though they've been inconsistent this year, they both still have shown that potential to go off for a crazy game. The defenders' defense is not as good as we expected it to be heading into the season. It's just gotten worse over time. The offense hasn't been all that great. And while Kelvin Harmon did have that great game last week, I don't expect him to have as good a game this week. I think the Panthers win this game 30-20. Then the last game, the Brahmas versus Roughnecks. The Brahmas are -3, over-under is 40, -166 in the money line. Not really shocked at the stat lines here, even though the over-under is crazy, but it makes sense. Again, Dormady has not played that good since his first half against the Panthers. And the Roughnecks have, for having the best offense in the league, quote Curtis Johnson, yikes. I wouldn't be shocked if Sinek gets put on the bench, even though that means they're probably going to start Garantano again, so yippee, we get to see that experiment again. The Brahmas win this game. Look, I want to, it'd be funny to troll the Brahmas fans here and say the Roughnecks win. Nah, this should be a blowout. This should be a 24-11 game. The Brahmas should easily win this. I do think it's an under. This is one of those over-unders that feels very much like a sucker bet. When you talk about an over-under of 40, you have 2 teams that need to score 20 points, basically, is the best way to view it. The Roughnecks are not going to put up 20 points. If they do, that's a miracle, and that's a damning statement to the Brahmas defense if that were to happen. And I think the Brahmas barely put up over 20. In fact, I actually think that this probably happens with a defensive touchdown, but the Brahmas do win and they do cover. Again, the Brahmas are just a better team. The Roughnecks are so bad. The Roughnecks are, like I said, I put the Roughnecks below the Renegades in my power rankings this past week because of the fact the Roughnecks have just looked so bad, and their only win was against the Renegades because Perez had a bad game. The Roughnecks just don't look good. I think that they do score 2 more points than they did this past week, as there's no way their offense can play that terribly again. And again, the Battlehawks defense is a better unit than the Brahmas by a little bit, and the Brahmas are dealing with a lot of key injuries on their defense. But I think that overall the Brahmas still win this game pretty handedly, 24-11, keep their lead in the XFL conference. So overall this past week, we saw 2 perfect game betting predictions. I hadn't had one of those in a while, and we had 2 of them. It was really solid. The Stallions game hit it. The Roughnecks game almost hit it, and the Panthers game did hit it as well. Those 3 games, I went for an 8-9 record. Now, I did completely go 0-3 in the Brahmas game. I had faith in the Brahmas, and they did not reward me in that. But overall, the spread is still just below 500 at 11-12. But we went 3-1 in both the over/under and money line to be now 15-8 and 15-9. And in perfect team score and game score, we came really close again. The Panthers Renegades was on track to actually hit that, but then a couple things happened. And the Stallions game was really close as well. So I came close to having a couple perfect games. This was a really great week last week. So we'll see if this next week is able to continue that, as this again is a very important week, but we'll see. So I'll do it. This has been ZomFox. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video, as well as hit the bell. You'll be notified as soon as I upload any videos, as I do at least 4 videos a week. And now with all the elimination and postseason videos, it's more like 5 a week pretty much, and a weekly short. And I am going to be live streaming, as I said earlier, tomorrow, 12:45. Or it will be when I start streaming, the Tank Bowl 2. And as always, I'll also post something probably before this video actually comes out, or it'll be Saturday before the stream. I'll post the playoff scenarios for this week. And as always, Have a great night.